Oh, hi. Apartment sales activity has been strong in the first half of 2013. 20% more sales have closed so far this year. Fewer units have closed in those transactions, so sales volume isn't up as much, but it's still up 2% over the first half of last year. The gross income multiplier is higher, the capitalization rate is lower, all indicating significant investor confidence in the market, and that means that as a result, prices are higher as well. They're up 8% compared to where they were at the end of the second quarter of last year. The largest sale so far this year is Archstone Belltown, selling for about $94 million. The highest price per unit was Gilbert House on Queen Anne at almost $400,000 a unit. But don't despair. If that's sort of out of your budget, there are lower cost transactions taking place. You could go down to Lakewood. The Lone Oak sold this year for about $36,000 a unit, less than 1/10 the per unit cost of Gilbert House. So these transactions show you some of the variety in the market between high prices and low prices. Now we're going to talk about some of the average trends. First, if you look at the number of sales, you can see that there's been, over the last couple of years, basically a pretty steady increase in sales activity. So far this year, 145 transactions have closed in the first half, compared to 121 sales in the first half of last year. That's a 20% increase in the number of sales taking place. Now, even though there were fewer total units selling, the dollar volume is still showing a pretty significant upward trend, particularly over the last few years. And in the second quarter of this year, it's a very respectable showing compared to pretty much any time over the last dozen years or so. So sales volume's looking pretty good. We still don't expect to top last year's sales volume, simply because last year there was a lot of tax motivations to beat the higher 2013 capital gains taxes that investors were expecting. In the first half of this year, sales volume totaled $982 million. It's already up with some July sales over $1 billion, but by the first half of last year, sales volume was $962 million. So we're showing a first half improvement this year. The price per unit is also up this year. It's $137,000 a unit, compared to $127,000 a unit at the end of the first half of last year. The gross income multiplier, which is a pretty simplistic way of looking at prices, but it's a really good indicator, is up to 11. At the end of the second quarter of last year, it was 10.1, and that shows that investors are more bullish about the market, and you can see that that's been an upward trend over the last few years. So currently, so far this year, investors are paying about 10% more for the same amount of rent as they paid by the second quarter of last year. The other measure that investors use even more is the capitalization rate. The cap rate on sales has continued to come down fairly steadily over the last couple of years. It sort of seems to have flattened out now in the last 3 or 4 quarters, but it's still lower than it was at the end of the second quarter of last year. The cap rate's 5.6% currently, compared to 5.8% at the end of the second quarter of 2012. You can see all of the charts that go along with this video in the article on our website. The article is called Quarterly Apartment Investment Update. I hope that you enjoyed this week's video, and you'll come back next week for another weekly apartment update.